So, good day to everyone. Let's go ahead with our lesson 4. But let's take a pause before starting and just relax. We're supposed to have some meditation. We can also start with opening prayer. Okay. Let's go ahead. May the wisdom of the all-compassionate one so shine within our hearts and minds this day, that we may be enlightened in our acts, thoughts and deeds. So shall we learn to be true, good and happy, and attain the spiritual peace. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya. So today we're going to be coming to the fourth and last part of Unit 1. It's called The Responsibilities of Adolescence. Okay, we've had a look at changes that adolescents experience, discovering one's talents and skills, discovering one's interests, and now we're on to the responsibilities of adolescence. So first, I'd like to welcome you, and I'd like you to recall the previous lesson, and I would like to ask some of you to share what you have learned in lesson 3. Now, so I'll pause and do this, and then let's move on to lesson 4, I should say that. So this is something you won't find in the book, in the PDF. Clear? Students, please on a sheet, either a digital sheet or paper, draw 4 columns. And for column A, students, please enumerate what you usually do before going to school. For example, take a bath, dress up, eat breakfast, etc. For column B, please, students, enumerate what your parents do before the children go to school. For example, cook breakfast, prepare their baton, etc. For column C, please, students, enumerate what you think teachers do before going to school. And for column D, what do you think school staff and personnel do before the school day opens? So people like the guards and the secretary and the caretakers and people like that. So you can use this graph as a starter, or you could just use this one, take a screenshot and then add it on. That's probably the simplest way to do it. So then please do a think, pair, share, wherein you will share your work with a partner and discuss the similarities and differences of your responses. So you choose your partner, and then the two of you, I would like some of the students to share their observations. The pairs of you share their observations together and say who it was you were together with. And then please answer the following questions. Answer and submit. What do you think will happen if your parents, teachers, school personnel and staff failed to do their responsibilities? Answer and submit. So a little guide here. Your answers may vary, but I'd like to emphasize that lack of order, chaos and misery can result from such irresponsible actions. So in Buddhist terms, we call that dukkha, or suffering. So then that's caused when people don't take personal responsibility seriously and do the effort. B, what could have moved your parents, teachers and school personnel and staff to fulfill their obligations and responsibilities? What could that have been? What motivated them? Please answer and submit. So I'd like that your answers as a rough guide may vary, but I'd like to emphasize that adults accept their responsibilities because they know what will be the consequences of their actions. Okay. C, again, you don't find this in the book. This is class stuff. As students, what could be your responsibilities aside from just going to school and attending classes as students? Hit pause here if you want to just answer that. I'll do the guideline next. The answers may vary, but I would like to highlight the importance of doing what is expected of you. You are to fulfill your responsibilities as students, as well as work hard for the attainment of your dreams. So next I'd like to direct you to the stories on pages 38 and 39. Let's process the story by considering as a class that being young or being a teenager is not an excuse to be irresponsible. If you closely analyze the life story of John Gokongwei and Jose Rizal, you will see that their responsible acts helped them become better persons and contribute to the society in the future. We start with a quote at the top of page 38 now. Title, Responsibilities of Adolescence. You must take personal responsibility. You cannot change the circumstances, the seasons, or the wind, but you can change yourself. That is something you have charge of. And a quote by Jim Rohn. Yeah, there's one spelling mistake in there. So reading then. Adolescence is an exciting stage in a person's life. During this time, a young person can venture to learn new things, spend more time with friends, and enjoy the freedom allowed by the lifting of some parental restrictions. However, this additional freedom comes with additional responsibilities that an adolescent is expected to observe and fulfill. How can adolescents respond to life's challenges and thrive? Perhaps the example of the young Jose Rizal can inspire us. But this question here, how can adolescents respond to life's challenges and thrive, I would like you to answer and submit. The young Jose Rizal and his daily schedule. When Jose was 13 years old, his parents decided to send him to a school that was far from his hometown. The young Jose had to live separately from his family and stayed in the house of a very strict spinster. Spinster is an old lady who didn't marry. Being a new boy, Jose was first put at the tail of the class. However, Jose believed that through perseverance, humility, and hard work, he could excel in his academics. Hence, from the first days of school, Jose decided to systematize his work. He created a schedule of what he had to do in 24 hours and did not deviate from it. His goal was to manage his time well and focus his attention on his studies. Soon, Jose's efforts paid off. From being the tail of the class, he was promoted to a more distinguished position. At the end of the term, he obtained excellent marks in all his subjects. The young Jose continued to persevere in his studies. His knowledge and love for his country moved him to be very vocal about the inequality prevailing during his time. When he reached adulthood, he valiantly fought for the freedom of the Filipino people and was martyred at Bagumbayan. He is known as our country's national hero. It's your country's national hero. And there we have a picture of a young student. They're organizing their day's studies plan. They're getting to bed early, well before. They're also doing household chores and personal chores like cleaning, and then they're studying well. So a well-organized plan, just like Jose, the young Jose Rizal. How will you emulate the young Jose? Emulate means to follow the example of. How will you follow the example of the young Jose? So answer and submit. I'm going to pause this here while I do that. Next, inflame. So we're on page 39 now. So your answers should include that Jose Rizal had set upon himself specific goals and worked hard to attain them. He acknowledged the need to be responsible and never wavered in his commitments. So, 2 then, inflame. What is the lesson of that story? Answer and submit. Your answers should include that all of us have a responsibility to fulfill, and we must welcome them if we want to become productive, successful, and happy. Three, how can you relate the story in your own life? Please answer and submit. Your answers may vary, but I'd like to highlight the importance of fulfilling one's responsibilities to the best of his or her abilities. The importance of fulfilling one's responsibilities. I'd like to discuss with you that the story tells us that you need to view yourselves in a positive light and trust that if you work hard for your dreams, you will attain it. Also, it is very important to fulfill your obligations and responsibilities. So moving on to the inflame text on the page 39. I'll read and you can follow also on the PDF. We all have the power to choose our response to any situation. It is our action that spells the difference between failure and success. Jose Rizal believed in his abilities and took responsibility for his success. In our daily life, we are called to practice the virtues of self-worth, humility, and responsibility. when we strive to do our ordinary duties extraordinarily well, we show concern and love for our family, our community, and the country. Next, I'd please like to ask you to answer the reflection questions on page 39, and then I'll solicit some volunteers to share their answers. Reflection. Have you encountered a similar life-changing situation like the ones experienced by the young Jose Rizal? Please share your experiences below. Answer and submit. And the second one, how can self-worth, humility, and responsibility help us hurdle the trying moments in our life? Hurdle is to jump over, to get over, cross over. The trying moments in our life. Trying means very difficult. Answer and submit. And the third one, do you think we should take responsibility for solving the problems in our life? Why do you think that? Please answer and submit. So we're over the page, onto page 40 now. The responsibilities of adolescence, I should be. I'd like to ask you, students, to write your different roles out. Then next to those roles, write what is expected of them. So this is a mini performance task. You actually don't find this on page 40, but it's in the same topic. Clear? Next to those roles, write what is expected of the person who has that role. For example, the role of a student. Can you think what is expected of someone who has that role? This is the example one. The student is expected to study well, follow school rules and regulations, and get good grades. Clear? And the role of a son and daughter, there are some expectations. They're expected to respect the parents, do the household chores, and show love and care to siblings. A friend. Those are just also some examples. You need to do your own additional ones as well as those. I just want to make that clear. A friend. So a friend has many various roles. Which ones can you think of? So you can hit pause and do your own. I'd like to give some examples. A friend is expected to cheer up a sad friend. A friend is expected to provide a helping hand, and a friend is expected to have fun together with their friend. Okay, so moving on then to rediscover. So now we're at the top of page 40. Responsibilities of adolescence. Responsibility is the state of being answerable or accountable for something within one's power, control, or management. This means that you can only be responsible for those things that you can do something about. Take, for example, the gloomy weather or the rising price of commodities, and even the opinions of your neighbors about you. Do you have control over them? You might like to believe that you do and feel that you have to be responsible for them, but in reality, they are beyond your power. Then what about your duties as a son or daughter, as a sibling, as a classmate, and as a friend? So the question there is, do you have control over them? The duties of the sons and daughters, siblings, classmates, and as a friend. Your duties as a son and daughter, your duties as a sibling, your duties as a classmate, and your duties as a friend. Do you have control over them? In these areas of concern, you have to fulfill your duties and responsibilities to the best of your abilities. So please answer and submit that. So you don't have control over the gloomy weather and prices and opinions of neighbours. You don't have control of those. But the question is it within your power to do your duties as a son and daughter, do your duties as a sibling, do your duties as a classmate, as a friend? As a son or daughter, you have to be responsible for your time, your studies, and your recreation. As a sibling, you are responsible for your younger brother and sister. As a student and classmate, you have responsibilities in class and in the school that you have to fulfill if you hope to receive good grades. As a friend, you are called to be responsible for the welfare of your friends and help them choose what is good and right. Do you consistently fulfill what is expected of you? So now I'd like to so we're missing a chunk there. No, we're not. There we go. So, do you consistently fulfill what is expected of you? That's just a question in there, not in the book. So now I'd like you students to read page 40 and also to ask you to fill in the pyramid 321. Responsibilities of adolescence on page 40 as well. But first of all, we have this section, self-worth and humility in fulfilling one's responsibilities. Self-worth and humility in fulfilling one's responsibilities. So, looking back at the story of the young Jose Rizal, he practiced the virtue of self-worth and humility in the fulfillment of his responsibilities. He believed that he had the intelligence, talent, and skills to hurdle the difficult situations he was facing. He was also humble, as evidenced by his acceptance of the work that needed to be done. You and other young people can emulate the young Jose Rizal by believing in yourselves and relying on your intelligence, talent, and skills to fulfill your responsibilities. You must also be humble and accept the fact that there are things that you need to do to fulfill your dreams. However, you must also acknowledge that there are people who are more than willing to help you succeed, and all you need to do is ask. So here's that pyramid, the 3, 2, 1 pyramid. 3 at the bottom, 2 things, and then 1 thing. So I'd like you can screenshot that as a way to do it. That would probably be the most sensible option. And then add your 3 things you have learned in the bottom, 2 questions you still have in the middle, and 1 way you can apply what you've learned up at the top. I'd like to ask for some of you to share your answers, and then I'd like to kindly ask you students this. What can you do to be considered as a responsible young adult? Please answer and submit. What can you do to be considered as a responsible young adult? Pause here if you want to work on your own. So, to self-worth and humility in fulfilling one's responsibilities. I'd like to ask you students to come up with 1 sentence that will motivate you to do your responsibilities. 1 sentence that will motivate you to do your responsibilities. It's your mini performance task then. I'd like to emphasize that you have skills and capabilities to fulfill your dreams. And also that part of succeeding in life is being responsible for one's actions. Clear? I'd like to discuss also the importance of focusing on one's circle of influence and embracing the responsibilities of adolescence. Valuing a virtue. So we're now on page 41. Now I'd like to ask you to read page 41, and I'll be presenting to the class the featured virtue of responsibility. We'll be explaining that responsibility consists of self-discipline, commitment, and consistency. Self-discipline, commitment, and consistency. I'd like to ask some volunteers to share some of your responsibilities and say how you can fulfill them, despite sometimes being not inclined to do so, not feeling like doing them. Then the top of page 41, valuing a virtue, responsibility. Firstly, this in the text here now, reading through. Are you a student leader in school? You can add, respond there. Do you lead a youth group in your community? Leaders carry a heavy responsibility, not only to their members, but also to the people who entrusted them with the leadership position. The leader is responsible for the fulfillment of tasks and the attainment of objectives. He or she is also responsible for the actions of the members of the group that he or she is leading. Responsibility, however, does not just rest upon the shoulders of the leader. When we speak of responsibility, we also look at the members of the group and how they do their part so that the goal can be achieved. Hence, responsible actions and behavior are expected not only from the leaders, but also from the members. Saint John Bosco once said, "Do your ordinary duties extraordinarily well, which means that no effort or task is too small as long as it is done to the best of our abilities." Responsible people practice self-discipline. They make a conscious plan of how to execute their part. They work without getting distracted and choose to finish their tasks before having fun. Furthermore, responsible people commit themselves to their tasks and the attainment of the goal. They prioritize things and choose to do the ones that they are tasked to do before engaging in other activities. Lastly, responsible people are consistent. This means that they are people upon whom others can depend. A responsible person honors his promises, gets his act together, not easily give up when things do not work out, and does not easily give up when things do not work out. All right then, so we're on to trivia. Responsibility, the noun. The word responsibility originated from the Latin term responsabilis, meaning answerable. Hence, a responsible person is someone who is answerable to or accountable for his or her actions. So then, referring to the trivia on page 41, you should understand adolescence as a process towards maturity. Let me ask you, students, what being answerable or accountable means. Let me ask you what being answerable means or being accountable means. Please answer and submit. Your answers may vary, but I'd like to emphasize that being answerable means that you are expected to do what you are supposed to do and accept the consequences or rewards for your actions. You find your own words. I just want to give you some guidelines. Okay, we're on to page 42, the uplifting realizations part. Firstly, I'd like to kindly ask you students to read page 42 and think of the implicit and explicit responsibilities attached to your roles. The implicit and explicit. So it's the hidden and the obvious, open and you can see them responsibilities. Some are told right straightforward and some are not. They're just expected, but they're hidden. Some responsibilities are explicit. They are clearly explained, while others are implicit. They're kind of hidden but built in. Explicit responsibilities are those that we need to do, which are already expected of us. Some examples of explicit responsibilities for young adolescents include diligence in one's studies, helping out with the household chores, and following the laws of the land. On the other hand, in implicit responsibilities, what we are supposed to do, that should be, is not immediately conveyed to us and calls for some reflection and initiative before we can act upon them. Initiative is self-motivation, not other people telling us. Reflection, thinking about it, and then being self-motivated before we can act upon them. So now let's go on to the points to ponder part. Have you heard about the concepts of circle of concern and circle of influence? The circle of that's not one you don't have to answer. It's a rhetorical question. We're going to go and explain it. The circle of concern encompasses the wide range of concerns we have, such as our health, our problems with the economy, the amount of government borrowing, or the threat of war. Very wide range of subjects. On the other hand, the circle of influence encompasses those concerns that we can do something about. They are concerns that we have some control over. Stephen Covey, author of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, asserts that we have to be responsible for our own lives. This means that we have to first work on things that we can do something about, or our circle of influence. In doing so, we enlarge our circle of influence and become effective persons and productive citizens. Complete the table below and write how you can expand your circle of influence by fulfilling your various responsibilities. So the table, you can use this one. It's slightly different in the PDF or the book. Complete the table below. You've got various responsibilities of Mr. or Mrs. such and such. And then we have to yourself, the responsibilities are, and then as a son or daughter, your responsibilities are, and then as a brother or sister, your responsibilities are, as a student, your responsibilities are, and as a citizen of the country, your responsibilities are. Okay, so that's for you to complete and submit. And continuing it, as a member of the church or faith community or temple community or sangha, if you know, or mosque, there you go, your responsibilities are what? And then as a consumer of media, that's newspapers, magazines, websites, and so on, what are your responsibilities? As a conservationist or person who advocates for the protection and preservation of the environment and wildlife, what are your responsibilities? So there's a mini performance task for you. And I'd like to ask volunteers to share their answers. Let's process the activity by considering that you need to reflect upon and see clearly that you have to fulfill the implicit and explicit responsibilities attached to your roles if you are to become responsible young adults. Next section, the engagement section, is the summative test. identify the person or the concept that is being described by the following items, and your answer on the space before the number. 1. This refers to those concerns that we can do something about. 2. This refers to the Latin term meaning answerable. 3. This refers to a person who advocates for the protection and the preservation of the environment and wildlife. Moving on. 4th question in the summative test. This refers to the author of 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, who asserts that we have to be responsible for our own lives. What's the name of that author? 5. This refers to the result of enlarging our circle of influence. This refers to the result of enlarging our influence, our circle of influence. 6. This refers to the attitude of responsible people when they work without getting distracted and choose to finish their tasks before having fun. To the attitude. 7. This refers to the wide range of concerns we have, such as our health, problems with the economy, and others. The wide range of concerns. Good. 8. This refers to responsibilities that we are supposed to do, but they are not immediately conveyed to us and cause for some reflection. 9. This refers to responsibilities that we need to do, which are already expected of us. And 10. This refers to the state of being answerable to or accountable for one's actions. The state of being, what is that? Okay, so we're on to page 44 now. So obviously answer and submit those. It doesn't have the green box on there, but it should do. In fact, I'm just going to quickly do that now. Apologies, that should have been done, but I want to make it absolutely clear for anyone looking at the YouTube video when the spinning beach ball stops. And I'll just pick up one from here and copy paste it onto those 3 slides. Excuse me. Here we go. 1, 2, and 3. So let's move on to the next one. Next slide. So we're on to charity and responsibility on page 44. Have you ever experienced dealing with a person who failed to fulfill his or her responsibility? Perhaps this is what you can answer there. Answer and submit. Perhaps a brother or sister who forgot to do his or her household chore, a classmate who didn't bring some materials for an assigned group project, or a schoolmate who throws his or her trash anywhere. How about that? Remember that we are all called to respect our fellow men and be always humble. Fellow men is also women as well. The challenge is to remind them of their responsibility without embarrassing them or causing them harm. We must always do it with charity, that's a kind heart. Share with the class how you can remind others of their responsibility in a charitable way. Answer and submit that, please. Let me ask you, students, what do you think is the proper way of correcting a person who is not fulfilling his or her responsibilities? What do you think is the proper way of doing that, of correcting a person? Your answers may vary, but I'd like to lead you, students, to the realization that we should all be charitable when we correct other people. We should be generous and considerate when we correct other people. And then I'd like to ask you, students, to do the case study, the situation analysis, in other words, on pages 44 to 45. Situation 1. Your class advisor tasks your class president to organize a cultural show as part of the school's Foundation Week celebration. All the grade 7 students will be performing various folk dances, while a selected few will be reciting poems by popular Filipino poets. Your class president assigns you to lead a group that will present the Muslim dance Singkel. Unfortunately, most of your group members are not interested to participate in the dance. How can you motivate and lead your group so that all of you can present a wonderful show? Possible solution 1, possible solution 2, and the best solution. Was there an activity in school which you had to do, and despite feeling half-hearted about it, did it anyway? Why? Moving on. Situation 2. Your friend has been studying very hard and aiming to get the highest possible academic award this year. Her family never failed to motivate her to reach for her dreams. One day her mother got sick with a life-threatening disease. Your friend shared to you that the medications were costly. As a result, she is thinking of dropping out and helping her father earn money to buy medicines. However, she also mentioned to you that her mother pleaded for her to continue with her studies. How can you help your friend? Possible solution 1, solution 2, and the best solution. If you are made to choose between two difficult options, how would you go about it? Answer and submit. So, scaffolding for the performance task. By showing a good example, walking the talk, and explaining to others the positive results of responsible behavior, we can support and encourage people by listening to them, cheering them up, and showing them that we truly care about them. Next, the scaffolding for the performance task. This is from the text. Create for your community members a poster with a slogan that affirms the positive effects of responsible behavior towards the earth and our fellow people. Some examples are provided below. Let us not be mean, but go green, go eco-friendly, clean the environment, live happily, every leaf on a tree breathes our life. I saw the ones that the students did previously, and I think you can do at least as good as that, if not better. And the rubric for that will look like this. It needs to have a slogan and a poster. 3 points, it will have a high quality, be very appealing and skillfully done. It's the two things, the slogan and the poster, must be highly cohesive and highlighting each other, and the output achieves the task objective successfully and convincingly. But for 1 point only, it has a low quality, it's not really appealing, and it's not very skillfully done. The unity aspect, slogan and poster are unrelated, and purpose, output does not achieve the task's objectives. There's your performance task. The summary of lesson 4. Responsibility is the state of being answerable or accountable for something within one's power, control, or management. And then we must believe in ourselves and use our intelligence, talents, and skills to fulfill our responsibilities. Explicit responsibilities are those things that we need to do which are already expected of us, like studying hard, doing our chores, and obeying home and school rules. That's explicit responsibilities. Implicit responsibilities are those responsibilities that we are supposed to do, but not immediately conveyed to us, and calls for some reflection before we can act upon them. And to round off our bookends, it's a quote from Anonymous. Quote, "I must do something will always solve more problems than something must be done," which is a kind of whining, complaining. Something must be done. If you're going to say, "I must do something," that will always solve more problems than something must be done. There we are. That's the end of lesson 4 for grade 7. The closing prayer. Reverently do we pray to thee, the Holy and Perfect One. We earnestly resolve to understand thy teaching and to daily tread thy path. So shall, like thee, we may attain the peace of Nirvana. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya. Go well. I look forward to working more together.